so far this morning.
So we're talking about a series of gunshots, potentially some that at least something prompted that initial police response that you saw, and then heard more shots. Can you describe the shot? We've had descriptions that it was not like a boom like a shotgun, but it was more of a crack that it would be maybe for a handgun or for an assault rifle.
Yeah, I feel like it was a handgun. I'm guessing it was whatever police carry on them, because it was a crack, like 4 in a row, and I could hear it really close because I knew where they were located, because I seen them show up at the location. But it was a crack. It wasn't like a big gun. I don't really know guns, but it was a crack.
And again, were they in rapid succession, or did it sound like some kind of exchange of fire back and forth with a delay between?
No, the ones I heard were rapid.
Okay. You're in a child care center. What have you been instructed to do, and what are you doing?
Well, currently we have our center on lockdown. We have a few kids here. We have about 23 kids in our care currently that were dropped off before we went on lockdown, because we were unaware of how serious the situation was in the beginning. And so we're not having anyone come in or anyone leave, and we have all of our doors locked. And on top of that, we do have security doors. So we have 2 doors protection right now. So that's what we are doing. The reason why we decided to go on lockdown and how we found out was I called the non-emergency line here in Fredericton, and the lady was very urgent and told me to go on lockdown. So, yeah.
So we're talking about children under the age of 5?
We have children, we have infants, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds, and 7-year-olds here right now, today.
So how are they doing? How are they doing, Rachel?
They have no idea, which is good. They're watching a movie, and they think it's really cool to be hanging out with their siblings. So they're happy. They don't know otherwise.
So they seem to be doing fine, at least as long as the movie's on. How are you doing? How this must be a stressful situation for you.
Yeah, being in charge, it is. It's scary because I feel like responsible for these children and the staff. And we have been talking about how it's feeling like Moncton, the Moncton shooting. I'm sure you know when that happened. So that's what we're feeling right now, and it's very scary that it's in our home and it's right down the street.
For people, we've been trying to describe the area itself, Brookside Drive. It's the area that is still, as we understand it, under this police lockdown, is from Main Street to Ring Road. That's quite a long area. What's it like, and what would the activity be like at, say, 7:30 or 8 a.m. Your time when this started?
Well, at that time, like, that road is very heavily populated. There's a lot of homes and apartments, and I was out on the road. I went to Tim Hortons. Everyone was at Tim Hortons because there's one right there, and everyone's heading to work, I guess. Things are a little slower lately because we have construction going on the Ring Road, which is the highway that people take to get to the south side, because we're currently on the north side. So it's a little backed up, and so everyone was just heading to work. There's people walking to work and biking to work. So everyone's out and about doing their thing, walking their dogs like a typical morning. And that's how it usually looks at the time I go to work. And I live in the area, so I don't think I would be able to get home right now because of the lockdown. So that's interesting.
So once again, just to remind people, you were there with a couple of dozen kids under the age of 7. They're happily watching a movie, and you have the stress of dealing with the situation. This is a situation where there must be parents who, have you been in contact with parents as well?
Yes, we've had a lot of parents call and concerned with the kids that are already here. The parents have already dropped off, and we have assured them that we are keeping them safe. They don't know anything. And for the parents that tried to drop off when we were on lockdown, they were quite scared, and they drove right home to go and lock down themselves because, like I said, the area, our families that go here all live in the Brookside Drive area. So we have a lot of parents at home on lockdown with their children. We also have a lot of parents that are actually dealing with the situation currently because we do have a lot of police officers as parents here. So we have a few of their kiddos. So it's kind of scary that we are aware of some police officers that are down. So our hearts are kind of there too, I guess, with them. So, yeah.
Rachel, you're doing great, and you've got the hands of a lot of little lives in your hands, and you're doing a great job. Thank you so much for telling us what you know about this and informing people. We haven't told people where you are, other than that you're caring for young people, and we're emphasizing again, police saying they want people to be very careful about posting anything on social media. Don't be telling people where you are or where you're hiding or anything like that, because that is clearly an ongoing situation. And again, the situation with the 4 people that have been shot dead in Fredericton, and police coping with the situation there, warning anyone in the neighborhood, a long stretch of Brookside Drive, to stay shelter in place effectively. Once again, our thanks to Rachel LeBlanc for bearing witness to what she is coping with in this ongoing situation. Joining us now, Harry Forstall from Fredericton, host of CBC News there, longtime host here, CBC News Network. Good to talk to you under most circumstances, Harry, but this is a difficult situation in your community. What do you know?
Absolutely, John. There is a lot of concern, of course, for the families and emergency response workers who are on the north side of the river, directly across the river from downtown Fredericton right now. This is not the kind of instance this community is used to, of course, and people are trying to get as much information as possible. The bottom line is there's a lot more we don't know, John. We know that the police have confirmed 4 fatalities. We don't know the circumstances of those deaths at all yet, only that they took place in the Brookside Drive area. There's a shopping mall there and a small community plaza. It's a busy place this time of the morning, of course, because people are trying to get to work, perhaps a little less busy given that it's August and a lot of people are on vacation. Nonetheless, that area, that neighborhood, has been warned that people in their businesses and in their homes should stay inside, lock the doors, and hunker down for the time being until we get greater clarity on exactly what's going on here. Police dressed in SWAT gear have been seen in the street, and beyond that, we're waiting for information like everyone else, John.
4 people killed, horrific for any community, but we're trying to get a description and a sense of the area that this took place in. Normally would be busy at this time and quite residential.
Well, that's right. As I said, there's a large mall, the Brookside Mall, as well as a smaller mall down the street that has a Tim Hortons, typical suburban mall. But for the most part, heavily populated with residential housing, a nice neighborhood, certainly not the sort of neighborhood where you would expect this kind of thing. And at this time of the day, most people would be getting ready to go to work, get in their cars, and begin the short trek to their jobs. And people may not, of course, be able to do that this morning because they've been told by the police to stay inside their homes and await further notice. We're just approaching the bridge over to the north side now, and where there would normally be, traffic at this time of the day, the bridge is pretty well empty. And as we get closer, I'm sure we'll find heavier and heavier police presence. One of my colleagues, as I left the office this morning, was saying that he had noticed a heavy police presence there this morning just after 8 o'clock when this is believed to have happened. And police have been, searching through the neighborhood. It's believed they're searching for an individual. And we don't know what is behind this or the nature of the fatalities, whether they involve emergency personnel or not. But what is going to be running through the minds of most people is the terrible situation that occurred in Moncton, one of the other three major cities in New Brunswick, back in 2014, when RCMP officers were the fatalities in a dire situation there. So there's going to be a lot of concern. That's going to be foremost in people's minds as they respond to the local Fredericton Police Department and the urging to stay inside and stay away from the Brookside area.
As you say, the Moncton incident, and we've already talked to witnesses who are recalling that, and with the deep concern about what's unfolding where you are. We do not know the identities of those 4 people killed. We have to emphasize that at this point. But we mentioned the police. There's well, we would call them ETF here in Toronto, Emergency Task Force. Some people call them SWAT teams. We understand Fredericton Police have that. And of course, the RCMP, not officially the police force for the city of Fredericton, but certainly a presence in the area.
Oh, absolutely. And the RCMP are the municipal police force for many smaller communities in New Brunswick. They work cooperatively with the larger municipal police forces in St. John, Moncton, Fredericton, Bathurst, and other communities. In fact, police force, the RCMP headquarters for J Division are in Fredericton, and you can bet they're conferring with their municipal colleagues about what's needed and what they can do to help in this situation. But the most difficult thing right now, John, is getting clarity on exactly what has happened here to result in the 4 fatalities that we're talking about. And people in the north side of Fredericton are going to be anxious to understand what's going on and when they will be safe to leave their homes. So along Brookside Drive, the affected area, there are subdivisions, there are condominium buildings, and people will obviously be hunkered down in their homes until they get the all clear from the Fredericton Municipal Police.
Harry Forstall, thank you so much. Harry, on the way to the scene, and we'll report the latest when he gets there. Appreciate your time, Harry.
Hope to have more for you soon, John. Thank you.
The emphasis again from the police to stay in place. There is an ongoing...
All right, we're going to pull away from this local CBC coverage here. Just to bring you up to speed, what we're talking about is a mass shooting situation that's currently unfolding in Fredericton, New Brunswick. If you're not familiar with where that is, New Brunswick is an eastern province. It's one of the maritime provinces in Canada. Fredericton is about an hour and a half or so from the border to the north of Maine. What we know is that earlier today, local time, probably about between 7:30, 8 o'clock, they are an hour ahead of us. Gunshots rang out. We know that there are at least 4 fatalities, and the area has been blocked off. Police have blocked off the area. They've told people who are living in what seems to be a mostly residential area to stay in their homes. They're asking everyone else to avoid the area, and that this is still an active situation. They have brought in an armored truck. The local reporter that's on the scene there says that there are some members of the SWAT team there. Some of them have assault rifles, and she also says that police are helping people get out of the area. They're walking people out of the area. Police are also asking people out there who are sharing information not to tweet out or post on social media or share in any way their location, SWAT team location, first responder location. They do not want that sort of information disseminated in the public sphere. So Paul Violas has been standing by. Paul, you are a CBS News security analyst. So this is what we know so far. Some people are being allowed to leave the area. Police are escorting them out, but they still have a SWAT team there. They have an armored vehicle there. What can you sort of give me, based on the information that we know so far, about how things are unfolding?
Well, Anne-Marie, based again on the great footage we're getting from CBSN online and showing the picture of the scene right now, clearly they have an outer perimeter and an inner perimeter, which means they've localized the shooting. They've begun to remove people from their homes, which means that they've narrowed down where a shooter is or shooters, if not have already mitigated that risk. And now they clearly understand what is a dangerous zone and what's outside that dangerous zone. So outside that dangerous zone, they're going to start to evacuate. All of these are really good signs for the general public, because it's basically telling us that law enforcement has begun to contain, if not has already contained, this situation, and they're beginning to cleanse it, which means to slowly evacuate it.
All right, so that is certainly good news. I want to stress to everyone that we really don't know what's going on here. We don't know if this is simply a domestic situation, because it is in a residential area, or if it has larger, broader implications. You really don't want to take any chances. We remember in Toronto not too long ago, there was a mass shooting there, a single shooter walking down the street in the area called the Danforth area with a lot of restaurants, randomly shooting people. Al-Qaeda took credit for that. His family said it had nothing to do with a terrorist act. In fact, he was severely mentally ill. But because of that, when we see these sort of mass shootings, we want to pay particular attention to it, because we don't know how things are going to unfold. Paul Violas, I want to thank you so much for your input and your expertise. You're always here when we need it. And for everyone else, we're going to dip back into the local CBC coverage.
A child care facility where there's a couple of dozen young people at the moment happily watching a movie. We have a lot of concerned parents as well. Can you talk a little about the neighborhood, this long stretch of Brookside, and what it would be like at the time that these series of shootings, it looks like, took place?
Well, the area that we're in is our residential neighborhood. There are lots of homes with attached garages. There are some apartment buildings. It looks like a very family-oriented area here in Fredericton.
So an area where at that hour, again, early in the morning, you'd have people heading to work, sending kids off to school, going for coffee, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is an area where people would have been going about their regular day, and that changed very suddenly this morning.
Can you give us a sense, and again, we can't be specific about police and where they are or what they're doing, but this would obviously be a full court press for the police of Fredericton, and also in a position, I guess, to bring in the RCMP into the investigation as well. Can you talk a bit about what sort of assets are there on the ground in terms of police presence?
There is a large police presence, and while I can't speak to the specifics of where they are and what they have, there is a large police presence on scene, as well as the fire department. There was an ambulance here, but it has since left the scene. But other than that, it's a very large police presence.
And we've been looking at video that you've sent in with the fire truck there and an ambulance as well. So full emergency personnel there on the scene. Natalie Sturgeon, I want to thank you for your time and look forward to the further reporting you'll bring us from the scene.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Hanton lives near the scene of the shooting. We reached her a little while ago on the phone. Here's what she had to say.
I thought I heard 4, and I thought that these were the ones that I would have heard around 20 after 8. I thought that they sounded more like police carbines than anything else. The only kind of shots I'm used to hearing in this neighborhood are during hunting season, and that's the only thing I could compare them with, and they didn't sound like that.
So you're saying it was rather not a boom like a shotgun, but more of a crack crack? Was it rapid?
No, not rapid. There was a time between them.
Was there a sense they were coming from 2 different directions?
No, I thought they were coming from one area, and they would have been the area that's somewhat west of where I am, which would be the area around the Brookside Mall.
Now, the Ring Road and Main Street with Brookside running between is this area that we're talking about. We're showing the viewers at home the map. It is a long stretch of road. Can you describe what that area is like?
Yep, for sure. When you come up from Main Street, the area that's been blocked off actually starts, on Main Street, and right behind that area is a large supermarket. Then as you come up from Main Street, on one side there's a gas station, and then the rest of it is pretty much residential, and it goes all the way up to the intersection with a street called Douglas Avenue, and at that point there is a funeral home on one side there and a small a shopping plaza with, a coffee shop and a sandwich shop and that sort of thing in it, and a couple of small businesses. Then you reach the Ring Road. The Ring Road connects the outlying areas of Fredericton with Fredericton itself and continues on to the downtown. So once you pass the Ring Road, again, you are into an area with a small amount of shopping and then residential. And the small amount of shopping includes the Brooks, a couple of other places like that.
Elizabeth Hanton, eyewitness who spoke to us just a few minutes ago here on CBC News Network. Let's talk to Megan Roberts, a busy breaking news desk this morning. Megan, what have you got for us?
Well, what we're trying to do is piece together a potential timeline of when this is happening, John. We're relying on both the police and also on witnesses. So this is a potential timeline. It's what we've been able to piece together based on what we've been hearing. So the first shots, according to some of the witnesses that we've spoken to, some of the witnesses that we've seen for our wire service that we subscribe to, the first shots, the earliest we've heard, is that they came just after 7 a.m. We also heard other people reporting they heard shots up until about 7:45 or around 8 p.m. So between right after 7 a.m. and around 8 a.m., somewhere in that area is when we heard the first shots. And around that also, you can see here, is when Fredericton police also sent out their first tweet. They sent that tweet out just before 8 a.m. local time. You can see a 4:30 a.m. screen on timestamp on your screen there. That's a different time zone. This happened just before 8 a.m. local Fredericton time, saying avoid that area between of Brook Street Drive, between Main and Ring Road, with confirming an incident resulted in at least 4 people killed. More information will be available when we can confirm. The other thing that we've been getting information from, and that's the area there that this is all happening, you can see actually how big it is, how much is blocked off, and how many people are affected by this right now with that road being blocked off, such a big chunk of road. Another thing that we've been hearing conflicting reports about is the number of shots. So we just heard that one witness saying she heard 4 shots. There was another witness saying he could have heard up to 17 shots that were fired. So we don't know how many shots were fired at this point. We're certainly getting a broad range of numbers of shots according to different eyewitnesses at the scene. Let's hear from one of those eyewitnesses describing what she heard. Okay, we don't have that for you right now, but like I said, we're trying to piece together this timeline. You can see there's a lot of people on the ground now. We're using information from the police on Twitter, and that is one of the sources they're saying for people to turn to. Go online, go to their Twitter account, and see the most up-to-date information. And one of the things that they posted is thanking people for their patience. You can see there, this is the account to follow for accurate and factual information. So you can go online there. You can listen to us here at CBC News Network as well. We're following this account in case you don't have easy internet access. The other thing that Fredericton police are really stressing right now is do not post your location or anything going on in your location online. Don't talk about it, because of course this is an ongoing incident right now, and police are doing tactical things and they don't want anyone to know exactly where they are and what they're doing. So that's another thing we've really been stressing, is do not post your location online right now, John.
Megan Roberts, thanks for this. In that neighborhood, the neighborhood that we're talking about here, the Brookside Drive area, more than 20 kids are under lockdown at a daycare center. We won't tell you where exactly, but Rachel LeBlanc is watching over them at the center, and she told us this morning how they're doing.
We have infants, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds, and 7-year-olds here right now today. We have our center on lockdown. We have a few kids here. We have about 23 kids in our care currently that were dropped off before we went on lockdown because we were unaware of how serious.
We're going to interrupt that to go to Brett Ruskin, who has even more breaking news for us. Brett, what do you know?
John, this happened in the last 1 minute. Fredericton police have tweeted that they have 1 suspect in custody at this time. This comes directly from Fredericton police tweeting on their Twitter feed that they have 1 suspect in custody in relation to this shooting. We don't know the circumstances, where this person was found, where this person was arrested, whether it's a man or a woman, but we do know directly from Fredericton police 1 person has been arrested at this point. The police are calling them a suspect in this shooting, and that the lockdown, the hold in place situation is still in place as well. So people are still being told to remain in their homes, keep their doors locked as well. We do know, again, throughout the morning, we've been talking about these 4 people killed in this shooting. We now know that Fredericton police have arrested 1 suspect in this situation. John.
Brett, this is a situation where in that same release we're talking about police saying that for the foreseeable future the area will be on lockdown. Trying to paint a picture for people about that, because we have heavily armed police, as you've been breaking the news to us. 1 suspect, there could be more, we don't know, but the idea that this area still does remain under lockdown as police do their job.
Well, you've got to put yourself in the shoes and in the situation that people find themselves in. So at a moment's notice, for example, if you're watching this, wherever you're watching this, to be told, lock the doors, stay where you are, you're stuck there. You cannot leave. So we heard the situation of the daycare with the 23 children inside, and the situation, the mentality of the parents who may have just dropped off their kids, were heading to work, and heard that their kids were in this daycare safe with the 2 doors, as we heard, the security doors locked up with the kids watching the movie. But just the thought that you can't get back to your kids, you can't get to your family members because of this lockdown that has been underway for at least an hour and a half or so since the news first broke of this shooting in the Fredericton area. Again, this lockdown affecting a large area of the north side of the city. Brookside Drive between Main Street and the Ring Road has been locked down for at least 90 minutes or so since the first shots were reported. We have been hearing many accounts of people who heard these gunshots. They've been confirmed by Fredericton police, who have said there have been 4 people killed as a result of this shooting. And the latest breaking news that we have is that 1 suspect is now in custody, arrested by Fredericton police. We don't know where they were arrested, whether it was in fact in that area that was locked down or elsewhere in the city. We don't know the identity of them either, but we do know that at least 1 suspect is now in custody. We don't know if police are looking for any other suspects, but they are advising people to remain locked down, stay in their homes if they're living in that Brookside Drive area with the doors and windows locked. John.
And that's a couple of key points there. Not only that, staying inside for your own safety, but Brett, let's talk a bit about the police emphasis on the public's ability, or potentially lack thereof, to send out information about what they may be seeing, because we live in an area of social media where this kind of information can be quickly accessed. Tell us about that, the warning to people in terms of the information that they are asked not to put out there.
Well, that's right. This goes along with any emergency situation that may be happening, any developing situation that may be occurring, to if you see police activity or perhaps police running through your backyard, for example. Even if you do grab a photo or a video, don't tweet it, don't tweet information, don't share police movements or activities, because everyone is on social media, and that could include possible suspects in an emergency situation such as this one. So Fredericton police tweeted it. It's not just us saying not to tweet things. It is Fredericton police who are asking residents who are in this area, who might see developments happening in their vicinity, not to share those developments and information online for the safety and the security and the integrity of this operation and the officers involved who are investigating this situation. Again, the officers involved are both those who are wearing conventional police uniforms with their fairly lightweight security vests, as well as those that are called the Emergency Task Force, SWAT team, different names in different cities. But the heavily armored police, the heavily armed police, are also on scene with their heavily armored vehicles as well. We are seeing some images that have been posted online, very generic ones that are showing not only police vehicles but also ambulances too, multiple ambulances on scene at the moment. And we do know that there is just a full response in the Fredericton area to this one part of the North End as a result of this shooting that has claimed the lives of 4 people and has led to 1 person being arrested. That suspect now in police custody. John.
Brett Ruskin with the breaking news there. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. We have another local resident joining us now, Robert Di Dodato. Now, he lives in the area and he too heard the shots. Robert, thanks for joining us. What did you hear?
Well, around 7 o'clock this morning, I heard what I thought were firecrackers initially. There was like a bang, followed by a bang, 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 and rapid fire, and then another bang. And I thought it was a peculiar sequence. And then a few minutes later, I stepped outside just to make sure, trying to figure out what it was that I was hearing, and I heard it again, but much louder. And concluded it was gunshots, but I wasn't sure at that point.
So the situation that you were talking about here, any way you could count or qualify the number of shots that you might have heard?
Well, in total, maybe over a 15-minute period, I'm going to estimate something like 15. And then roughly, that all sounded the same, like the same frequency, the same sort of sound. And then roughly 20 minutes later, I heard one very loud sound that had a much different pitch to it. I thought it was a rifle, but I really don't know.
Was there a sense that there was a back and forth, or that this was a single individual shooting in a particular direction?
I really don't know. All I could hear was the sequence. I could hear them, like a bang, 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 as I described earlier. A few minutes later, I could hear the various sirens. That's about all I know.
What is the situation where you are right now?
Well, we're all inside our homes. The neighbors are texting with one another, and everybody is sort of concerned, I guess. There's police, obviously very visible, armored vehicles. The streets are secured. There's police blocking the streets to and from. So I guess just everybody's on edge.
This neighborhood, it's a long stretch of road that we're talking about here that has been cordoned off by police. But can you talk about what normally on a Friday morning at around 7:30 in the morning would be going on in that neighborhood?
Well, I can only speak for myself. I'd be walking the dog, drinking a coffee, smelling the roses. Completely safe, very comfortable day and night, quite frankly.
The police, as you say, again, we can't talk specifics about their activity, but it's fair to say that there is a full court press, a significant police presence there on the streets?
There is a combination of RCMP and the local city police. Very impressive to watch. They're evacuating some premises. You can see this from my picture window, and it's kind of amazing to watch, actually, as they're evacuating people. The police are putting themselves between the area where presumably the shooter is and where they're trying to get the people to safety. So just they're acting as a shield watching as people are leaving the area. It's quite impressive to watch.
We're, of course, in touch with police as they continue to give directives to people, and we understand the latest with the arrest of a suspect, that their lockdown scenario effectively continues on. What is it in terms of your day and the next hour or two that you're going to do there with your family in your house?
Well, we're feeling anxious but safe, and I think everybody's wondering if we're going to get to work at some point when they open the streets up. It's surreal. So we're just comforting one another. We watching the news, just trying to learn what's going on, and just waiting to get word, from the from the authorities that it's safe to leave. But in the meantime, it's just just trying to comfort one another.
What are you saying to one another to comfort each other?
Well, just that there are police around. They obviously know what they're doing. For us to just keep our wits about us, to be staying inside the home, keep the doors locked, and just not do anything stupid. So I guess we're just kind of reminding ourselves of that. And I guess in a way, a lot of friends and family are calling in various forums as well, and that's kind of a distraction, being able to talk about it with them. Not just looking out the picture window, observing all of the activity.
Yeah, and as again, police emphasize people to stay away from those picture windows. We were talking about a live fire scenario, and bullets have no conscience and could end up coming through a window. So the reminder to anyone who's watching to stay away from your windows and to keep your doors and windows locked. Robert, I want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate that, and all the best to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Robert Didi Dodato lives in the area and spoke of hearing as many, he said at least some 15 shots earlier today in Fredericton. Again, the news we've been carrying for you here on CBC News Network. Confirmed by police, 4 people dead in a shooting in Fredericton. Situation now where we've got a release for you from the Premier, and we're going to just read that to you. Premier Brian Gallant issued the following statement regarding the ongoing events in Fredericton. We're all shocked and saddened to learn this morning of the ongoing tragic incident in Fredericton. On behalf of all New Brunswickers, I offer my condolences, thoughts, and prayers to the victims and their families. During this difficult time, our thoughts are also with the courageous men and women on the front lines working to keep us safe. At this time, I would ask New Brunswickers, particularly those in areas identified by police, to keep informed about the situation as it develops and to follow instructions of law enforcement officials working in the area. That's the statement from the Premier of the province, Premier Brian Gallant. Again, the news we've been carrying, 4 people dead in a shooting in Fredericton, 1 suspect under arrest by police. The situation, though, is still ongoing. The Brookside Drive area, from Main to the Ring Road, effectively, people are still being asked to shelter in place, to stay there, doors and windows locked. A couple of other warnings that police are out there emphasizing for people. Don't be calling 911 for information. Don't be calling 911 to inform police of what you may be observing outside your window. They're there, they're doing their jobs, and their safety could be compromised by having phone lines tied up like that. Also, don't identify anything on social media about where you are in your home or what may be going on in terms of police activity outside your home. Again, that is for your safety. That is for the safety of police. We have multiple resources on the ground with CBC News, and reporters will continue with this breaking news for you here on CBC News Network.
One of my neighbors said that it had been going on for maybe 10, 15 minutes and that the police were all around.
Police have a suspect in custody in an ongoing shooting incident in Fredericton. At least 4 people are dead. Witnesses report hearing shots starting after 7 a.m. local time. They say they heard gunfire for over an hour. The neighborhood is on lockdown, and police are telling people to stay away from the area. Joining us now, as he has been from the very beginning since this news broke, the CBC's Brett Ruskin. Brett, what more do you know about this story?
John, it is continuing to develop minute by minute. The latest breaking news that we heard about in the last 20 minutes or so, 1 suspect in custody as a result of this ongoing investigation. Again, we know that 4 people have been killed from this shooting, and that police have been on scene in that Brookside Drive area in the north side of Fredericton all morning long. So the situation there is that homes, businesses, offices are all on lockdown still at this hour, so people can't come, they can't go, they have to have their doors and windows locked. There is the exception that police are escorting some people out of their homes to safety in some situations. That information coming from Natalie Sturgeon, CBC reporter on scene at this time. But overall, the lockdown is still in place. That news of the lockdown still remaining in effect comes alongside the news that Fredericton police did arrest 1 suspect in relation to this ongoing incident. We don't know whether or not that suspect was arrested in the Brookside area, elsewhere in the city, who the suspect was. We just know that 1 person has been arrested. We also don't know if police are searching for other suspects in this investigation. We know that 4 people have been killed as a result of this shooting that began a number of hours ago, 2 to 3 hours ago. We have heard from multiple residents who have experienced the effects of this lockdown, not only along Brookside, but in the surrounding streets as well. it is quite a lengthy area. It's not just 1 or 2 blocks. It is quite a long stretch of residential roadway with lots of homes and small businesses there. We heard in particular people being locked down in a Tim Hortons, people being locked down with kids in a daycare, 23 children in one daycare who were there watching a movie, but the staff ensured that both the security doors were locked and that they were communicating with parents who couldn't get to their kids. They had perhaps just dropped them off and were waiting outside the confines of this lockdown area while the kids were in daycare inside. So it is a large stretch of area that is currently locked down still in Fredericton, and police are still advising people to stay indoors, keep their doors and windows locked unless police come to your door and offer the opportunity to be escorted to safety. John.
Brett, as you've been talking there, Natalie Sturgeon, who's on the scene for CBC News, has been sending in some video. You can see what she's been describing to us, at least where she is. And again, we're not revealing that location, but it appears to be at one end of the activity where there's some sense of calm. But again, heavily armed police officers, emergency task force, RCMP, ambulances and fire crews, they're all on the scene. So, Brett, you're talking about the suspect, and as you were rightly emphasizing, we don't know where the suspect was arrested. And I guess the other aspect of this is that despite the arrest of an individual in this case, and who this person is and why they're arrested and what the charges may be, we do not know at this point. But we do know is that police are still calling this an ongoing situation, right, in terms of the public's need to stay and shelter in place.
Still an ongoing situation indeed, and you're just taking a look at the short video that we have there from one part of this locked down area, and we do know that there's just a huge response from emergency officials. We do know that there were conventionally clothed police officers just with their regular uniformed, with their conventional security and bulletproof vests, but also there were the heavily armed and heavily armored police officers as well, called Emergency Response Team or SWAT Team, different names for different cities. They arrived shortly after the shots were fired with their heavily armored vehicles as well, and they arrived to secure the area, to search through the area as well. We heard from numerous witnesses about police officers walking through, patrolling, running through the area as well. Again, the latest tweet 19 minutes ago from Fredericton Police is that they have one suspect in custody and that there is just a major response there. As you can see, the ambulances as well that have arrived on scene. We do know that there have been at least 4 fatalities as a result of this shooting. That information comes directly from Fredericton Police. John.
Great work this morning, Brett Ruskin. I understand you're off to the scene. We'll let you do that and gather, and we'll talk to you soon here on CBC News Network.
Thanks, John.
Nearby, more than 20 kids are under lockdown, as Brett was referring to. Rachel LeBlanc, a woman under incredible pressure, looking after these young people and dealing with parents and concern all around her. She did, though, speak to us. Here's what she had to say.
We have infants, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds, and 7-year-olds here right now today. We have our center on lockdown. We have a few kids here. We have about 23 kids in our care currently that were dropped off before we went on lockdown because we were unaware of how serious the situation was in the beginning. And so we're not having anyone come in or anyone leave, and we have all of our doors locked. And on top of that, we do have security doors. So we have 2 doors protection right now. They have no idea, which is good. They're watching a movie, and they think it's really cool to be hanging out with their siblings. So they're happy. They don't know otherwise. We've had a lot of parents call and concerned with the kids that are already here. The parents have already dropped off, and we have assured them that we are keeping them safe. They don't know anything. And for the parents that tried to drop off when we were on lockdown, they were quite scared, and they drove right home to go on lockdown themselves because, like I said, the area, our families that go here all live in the Brookside Drive area. So we have a lot of parents at home on lockdown with their children. We also have a lot of parents that are actually dealing with the situation currently because we do have a lot of police officers as parents here, so we have a few of their kiddos. So it's kind of scary that we are aware of some police officers that are down, so our hearts are kind of there.
LeBlanc, she's at a child care facility. We've got some breaking news for you now. I think we're going to, and bear with me on this, I think we're going to talk to Megan Roberts, who's been trying to piece together a timeline of how this unfolded this morning. Megan, what happened?
Happened here, and we've been doing that using eyewitness accounts and also using the information we've been getting from Fredericton Police, which we've been getting from Twitter, and that's where they say that they're going to put the most accurate information. And this is the latest that we have from them, that they confirm they have one suspect in custody. They do say that the Brookside area is contained for the foreseeable future as the investigation is ongoing, and they're saying please continue to avoid the area and follow them as well for the most up-to-date information. So one suspect in custody, still an active scene from what we understand. This is the first tweet that they sent out. They sent this out just before 8, I believe, in the morning local time. So you can see just about before 8 a.m. local time, they're asking people to avoid that area. There was an incident that resulted in at least 4 people killed. That was first we heard from police. Even earlier, around 7 a.m. or just after 7 a.m., we started hearing from witnesses who are hearing shots in and around that area that you can see there. Again, this is an active scene, so we're not saying exactly where people are located, where they heard or saw what. But we know around just after 7 a.m. local time, people started hearing shots. We're hearing anywhere from 4 shots to up to 17 shots from people that they heard being fired. A lot of local businesses in the area that are shut down right now as part of this greater lockdown. And now we have this tweet about just over 2 hours later. So a 2-hour timeline between when we heard 2 to 3 hours between when we heard some of the first shots fired and now when there is one suspect in custody. Let's hear from one of those witnesses about exactly what they heard this morning.
Well, around 7 o'clock this morning, I heard what I thought were firecrackers initially. There was like a bang, followed by a bang, 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 and rapid fire, and then another bang. And I thought it was a peculiar sequence. And then a few minutes later, I stepped outside just to make sure. Trying to figure out what it was that I was hearing, and I heard it again, but much louder. And it all sounded the same, like the same frequency, the same sort of sound. And then roughly 20 minutes later, I heard one very loud sound that had a much different, pitch to it. I thought it was a rifle, but I really don't know.
So just to sum up, we're hearing witnesses saying, like that man said, around 7 a.m. local time when they started hearing shots fired. Seems like witnesses were hearing shots fired throughout 7 to 8 a.m. So there could be a period there, a chunk of time when there were shots being fired. We don't know exactly where, of course, or who was firing those shots. We do know now, a couple of hours later, about 3 hours or so later, 2.5 hours, that there is one suspect in custody. But again, this is still very much an active scene, and it's worth mentioning again and again and again as we're getting information from social media, from Fredericton Police on Twitter, that you can go to them for information, but you also should not be posting your own information online. Don't post your location. This is still an active scene. There's police work going on, and they do not want any of their activities to be revealed, John.
Yes, and don't emphasize anything on social media that would indicate where the police are as well. That's something else that they are warning people about. They should be allowed to go and do their jobs without any individuals who they may be looking for knowing where they are. Megan, thanks for this. And earlier we spoke to my colleague Harry Forstall.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Green. We have been listening to the CBC Network News out of Canada, covering some breaking news out of Canada, the eastern side. Here's what we know so far. At least 4 people are dead after a shooting. Police say the suspect is in custody, and now they're trying to figure out a possible motive. The incident happened around 7:30 Eastern this morning in the city of Fredericton, New Brunswick. That's the capital of that province. It's less than 100 miles from the U.S. border in Maine. Natalie Sturgeon is a reporter for CBC News. She was on the scene all morning long. Here's what she had to say earlier.
Well, the area that we're in is our residential neighborhood. There are lots of homes with attached garages. There are some apartment buildings. It looks like a very family-oriented area here in Fredericton.
So an area where at that hour, again, early in the morning, you'd have people heading to work, sending kids off to school, going for coffee, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is an area where people would have been going about their regular day, and that changed very suddenly this morning.
Can you give us a sense, and again, we can't be specific about police and where they are or what they're doing, but this would obviously be a full court press for the police of Fredericton, and also in a position, I guess, to bring in the RCMP into the investigation as well. Can you talk a bit about what sort of assets are there on the ground in terms of police presence?
There is a large police presence, and while I can't speak to the specifics of where they are and what they have, there is a large police presence on scene, as well as the fire department. There was an ambulance here, but it has since left the scene. But other than that, it's a very large police presence.
We want to read a statement issued by the Premier of New Brunswick, Brian Gallant. We are all shocked and saddened to learn this morning of the ongoing tragic incident in Fredericton. On behalf of all New Brunswickers, I offer my condolences, thoughts, and prayers to the victims and their families during this difficult time. Our thoughts are also with the courageous men and women on the front lines working to keep us safe. At this time, I would ask New Brunswickers, particularly those in the areas identified by police, to keep informed about the situation as it develops and follow the instructions of law enforcement officials working in that area. Again, police say that despite a person being in custody, that it is still an ongoing situation. We're going to continue to follow this developing story, and of course, we're going to bring you updates throughout the morning as it warrants. So turning now to California. More than 20,000 residents fled their homes last night as the holy fire continues to grow, prompting emergency evacuation orders. The holy fire, that officials say was an act of arson, has burned 10,000 acres and is only 5% contained. A state of emergency is now in effect. CBS News foreign correspondent Jonathan Bigliotti is in Lake Elsinore, California, where the fire is creeping closer and closer to homes.
Massive flames raged up the mountain and into the backyards of this hillside neighborhood. Some residents desperately sprayed down their homes and were forced to evacuate overnight as the flames closed in.
Oh my God!
Hundreds of firefighters are battling the fast-moving fire that's threatening thousands of homes as dozens of planes attack the blazes from the air.
Fire crews are dropping flame retardant on these flames. This is exactly what fire crews were afraid of. These flames making their way over this hill so rapidly, directly in the line of sight of these homes.
It's a terrain and fuels-driven fire.
Cal Fire Battalion Chief Tim Chavez says firefighters have a long battle ahead and expects the fire to grow.
How serious is this?
The homes are really in danger, otherwise we would not pull the evacuation trigger.
But some residents have decided to ignore evacuation orders and stay behind.
It's my house, my capital, my kingdom. I don't want to just leave it. We got a lot of helicopters, we got a lot of support here.
Forrest Clark, the man who allegedly started the holy fire, pushed back against the claims before he was arrested.
You know how this fire started? I have no idea. I was asleep. I had 2 earplugs in.
Clark was living at the Holy Gym campground where the fire started and allegedly threatened to burn down the area before.
I'm pissed. I'm outraged. I'm disgusted. I want people to understand that one man caused this devastation for no apparent reason.
Lake Elsinore Mayor Natasha Johnson is urging residents who have stayed behind to evacuate now.
Nothing is worth it. Grab your things, grab your family, grab your valuables, and move. And everything else is replaceable, but your life is not.
A federal judge has threatened to hold Attorney General Jeff Sessions and other DOJ officials in contempt. Judge Emmett Sullivan said it was unacceptable for the government to deport a mother and daughter for seeking asylum in the U.S. during their court hearing. The pair was sent back to El Salvador, but the judge ordered their plane to return to the U.S. immediately. Maria Villarreal reports.
We're standing across the street from a very busy highway and about a quarter of a mile from the facility here in Dilley, Texas. This is the largest family detention center in the United States that houses mothers and children. Now, the attorneys for the mother in this case, that goes by the name Carmen, says she was facing gang death threats and an abusive husband. The South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas, seen here in video shot by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has been home for Carmen and her little girl for weeks. The mother was here while fighting the denial of her asylum request. She's part of a lawsuit filed by the ACLU challenging what they say are the Trump administration's more restrictive asylum policies.
She fled to this country seeking safety, but instead